I heard a lot of you guys talking about your own self, the vulnerabilities, the issues and challenges, and you kind of breaking it up. A lot of amazing stuff. I really don't know what you're expecting at this point in time. But, you know, I was kind of thinking maybe I should start connecting a big craft that you're learning a craft of communication. Because you're doing that, I thought maybe I'll start connecting that with some of the dots that I have had an experience so far. So, really, you know, at this point in time, in the last 3 years that I've been back in Kathmandu, there is this thing called entrepreneurialism. You know, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. If you're not an entrepreneur, you're not a person, right? You're not the kind of person that you want to hang around with. So, the entrepreneur is like is really the guy who's going to bring change, the Superman, the Supergirl, whatever. So, now, I'm not for and against it. It's something that if people want to do it, you should do it. If there is one person who are not too ready for it, you got to introspect on that. But if you look at that, and I want to connect this with a couple of other things together, of which the craft of communication is a very important stuff, right? So if you connect entrepreneurship, or entrepreneurialism, I call it sometimes. If you connect that, you know, in Kathmandu, maybe a couple of years, 3 to 5 years, and across the globe, maybe another last 10 years, this wave has been quite widening and pretty strong these days. To an extent, sometimes it's very scary because there are guys who are smart and they would do very well working for someone, yet they want to be an entrepreneur. So it's that strong. And if you're going to look back how this is coming along, there's a lot of forces that's helping it bring together, right? Of which one of them is technology. So if you look at the way technology is kind of pushing you at the corners of creating new skills, this is where communication comes along. And the way to look at that, I normally consider this whole thing as two level of sets of things. Like for instance, a lot of you guys would be working for someone, would be working for great companies, and you become greater CEOs and managers, etc., or you become entrepreneurs, you make an impact in life, or if not all that stuff, you're making other people happy. So if you look into all grand scheme of things, everything that you do in your life can be, from an activity perspective, you can break down into two kinds of activities. One is the transactional kind, which is very predictable, which I know that you do something, it's going to have a definite output, okay? And then there's the other kind, which is the transformational kind, which is unpredictable, unplanned. And I'll try to connect this with the communication thing. So if you look at transactional activity, it's planned, it's predefined, it's predictable. Like in the case of you going out to a bank. If you were to go out to a bank with a check in your hand and you want to honor that check, so you go to any of the banks and you hand over that particular check, the teller is going to look at it. There are a couple of things the teller would do, right? So probably the teller is going to look at the date and put a tick on that, the name, tick on that, signatures, tick on that. And then finally, if everything is good and the person who's supposed to give you the money, he's got his money in the account, he's going to hand over you the check. So it's very predictable. Now, if the check don't match, the dates don't match, or there's some misprint on the check, the guy's going to tell you something. The guy's going to, I can't honor the check for you. So it's very predictable. So when you hand over the check, you're not expecting a dime or so to come out of it, right? You're not expecting when you hand over a check, the guy's not going to go, voila, we got a birthday cake for you. It's not going to happen. It's very predictable things, all right? So what can you do about it now? If I bring in technology and there are already things in place, I can have a kiosk machine. In the kiosk machine, you can actually go and take that particular check, put that check in. The system is going to have a validation of the date with its something within. The name is going to do a little sanitization, check the signatures, map it with what you have in the database, and everything goes well, you get the money through the other slot. Now, let's take another scenario here. Let's imagine an 80-year-old woman walking up to that particular bank. She has absolutely no idea how to use that machine. So she's screaming on the top of her voice. She has been using that account for almost 50 years now. You don't want to miss that. You don't want to lose that customer. So what do? So the lady is screaming. She goes up to the counter. The counter is not ready to help. The system is not going to understand that. Or the same case with another person who really needs the money because there is an operation happening in the next hospital down there, and she needs that money out of it. Somebody has to trust him saying that these are valid checks. It's just that it's a post-dated check. Right? So you need human intervention in there. You need people-to-people connect there, which systems will never ever do. And this, the ability to someone to walk, smile, and able to relate to that particular person, and understand and make that one-time exception, robots and artificial intelligences will ever, never, ever do. That is where your ability to communicate goes to the next level. So, everybody communicates, right? The craft of communication can be both transactional as well as transformational. If you're making sure that you speak the right things at the right place. Someone talked about right and best. Who's that girl? Someone talked about right and the best. So, transactional is very, very right thing. So you have a framework. This is how a sentence should be like. A subject, a verb, and an object. It's very, very stuff. Right? It's like Siri. You ask Siri, hey, so, am I looking good today? And Siri might give you some answers which has already been programmed for. Right? So it's very transactional. But does Siri change the way you feel about? I'm not too sure about it. At least not in my case. So, if you look at communication as well, it's very transactional, and you can break that thing into transactional and transformational again. As much as we learn the craft of communication, we got to understand that transformational is not the right thing. Transformational, as per the girl's word, is the best thing. The best thing that you want to look at. What is the best for that particular moment? And that's where the people-to-people connect come along. And that's where, I think this whole thing that you guys are doing right now in terms of building skills and looking for one another and improving oneself and competing around, etc., and all that stuff is really creating a stage for, kind of to go out and break boundaries and cross over people's heart and build relationships and trust and do amazing things in life that probably I never had a chance to do. So you guys are a lot lucky that way. Like when I was your age, definitely I didn't have people like Abhishek and Umesh around. So guys, I think you're very lucky. If not for Umesh and Abhishek, give a clap to yourself. Another thing is, like this is Saturday and you guys decided to come here and be a part of this amazing event. That again is another big thing altogether. All of you guys came up and spoke about some of them were like performances, which was amazing, really. A lot of times I don't get the chance to kind of see those kind of things. A lot of times you meet people who've lost that, if there is at all a word of naivety, they've lost that stuff, in their life. And to come along and listen to you guys and share about your vulnerabilities and the path of growing up and issues in life and all that stuff, it just makes you more human, and it just helps me to connect. It just helps me understand, she's just like one of me, or he's just like one of me. So that's very transformational in nature, right? So you may learn the art of craft, like what to say when, how to say it, what sort of faces to make when to say it. Should you kind of pause for a certain second? That's all good. That's very effective, and that's really important for you. But I believe if you really want to be furthermore transformational, you really have to take communication as what it's meant for. And that is, you're not there to kind of go ahead and give a very transactional stuff. Like the guy says, what's your name? My name is Zaffar. That's there. But see beyond where you can go. See where you can cross boundaries. And that's where, communication takes a very different turn altogether. And that's where it becomes very important to understand that communication is actually a lot less about you and a lot about the other person. It's less about you and it's more about people. Why? Because you really need to understand what to say, when to say, and more importantly, what not to say. So if you put that in perspective, there's a lot of literature about, trying to get to the other person's head, whether you call it emotional intelligence or whether you call it empathy. Whatever it may be, I think more than just the craft is a threshold. More than that, I think you really got to have a sense of a very, very receptive, very, very strong antenna. Now, some people are born with it, they just understand, okay, so this is what's happening. Some people will have to work really, really hard. So if your antenna is able to catch the vibes of what the other person is going through, right now, at this point in time, I'm trying to catch your antenna, but it's very, very difficult because everyone's staring, right? So it's just one way. But if you have that ability, and that ability requires a lot of other things that you might want to do, get to know the person, kind of get the background, etc. That's very, very transformational in nature. I shared this in some other platform as well, that when you have a 3-year-old brother or sister come to you with a piece of paper in hand and rolls it up and sort of points at you and says, "Dichao," what do? Yeah, you do. Nobody does stupid, kagazo, go and study your stuff. Nobody does that. You really get down to that level of 3-year-old kid, and perhaps you kind of, and then probably you kind of imagine that you're just dead for a while until the guy comes to you and wakes you up, and then, and all that stuff happens. You're not being logical here, right? But what you've truly done is you've been able to understand the other person's mood, emotions, the background, the person's motivation, desirability, and all of that stuff. And what it does is it really builds your connection, the trust, the relationships, etc., which a transactional communication skill wouldn't do. So again, it becomes very important to understand, like, how do you want to communicate? Do you want to communicate the right way, or do you want to communicate the best way, right? And to communicate the best way, you really need to understand, as I said, not just about who the person is going to read, what the audience that's going to read out, or the audience that's going to listen to you. But it's also important, where do you want to go after 10, 15 years from now? And I think this was something that I've been trying for a very long time, the last 5, 6 years, that don't communicate. First of all, yeah, I mean, you got to have an empathy for the other person, understand where he's coming from, all that kid and you, the gun thing. But also, when you communicate, I think, this is my personal stuff, you really have to put yourself, where do you want to put yourself 15 years from now, and put your adjectives and words and your principles and your beliefs and the good person that you want to be through that, whatever status you may call it, through that. A lot of times we communicate, or we say, or we do things, or we listen to things basis where we stand right now. If you can wear the clothes that you want to wear for the next promotion, why can't you speak the language, or why can't you exhibit the body language, or why can't you be the kind of person and exhibit that message that you want to deliver basis where you want to be 15 years from now, right? So, and you look back, again, you introspect back and you realize that, okay, fine, I've done a kind of a good job. So if you look onto all the perspectives here, it's really a question about two things, of the many, many things: communication, and of course, learning and unlearning. I think it's a very vital stuff for you guys, whoever is doing, oh, by the way, whoever's not, Umesh, and then there's something called the Unlearn Tribe. Yeah. So wonderful job, guys. I don't know what was really expected out of me, but I'm trying to kind of connect the dots, and I really want to make sure that whatever you guys are doing, even if you don't get your 75K, amazing stuff. So beautiful, beautiful people, right? And thank you so much for inviting me. I might stay a little longer because I really want to see what's happening around in breakout sessions as well. But thank you. Thank you again. Thanks a lot.